This is The Roadmap with Lee Heisman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Roadmap, exclusively here on ASBN.com. I'm Lee Heisman, and every week we bring you some of the brightest entrepreneurs, CEOs, and business owners who are climbing the ladder, scaling their businesses, and thinking one day how to exit stage left. Today, we have a very special guest all the way in from Jacksonville, Florida, Dr. Chidi Uche.
Welcome. Thank you, Ms. Lee. My name is Dr. Chidi Uche. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I made sure I pronounced that precisely. You're the founder of Jacksonville Total Care.
Correct.
And I want to talk about that. Thanks for coming all the way in for this show.
Thank you.
So first off, you look like $1 million.
Well,
you know that. You look the part, and we're going to get into, the cosmetic part of your practice. But talk about, 2008, 2011, when did you start this practice?
Jacksonville Jacksonville Total Care Medical Center started off as an imagination in 2008. I came to Jacksonville in 2007 after I finished my residency in Columbus, Georgia, and I started working as a hospitalist. A hospitalist is a doctor who sees patients within the hospital system. And I did that from 2007 till about 2008-9. I realized, I could do this myself. So I was initially started as with a hospitalist group, but then I opened up my own practice because my dad was an independent practitioner. He's a lawyer. So I was always used to seeing him working for himself, not working for anybody else. So I gathered the skills from that, started a hospitalist group myself. Then after the hospitalist group, when I would send the patients home, they would always request to see me again, but I wasn't in primary care. I was seeing patients within the hospital. So I thought to myself, that must be a niche where patients still want to have the kind of care that I gave them when in the hospital on the outside. And that's when Jacksonville Total Care Urgent Care Medical Center was actually founded. So 2008 is when I started, and then 2011 was official. I opened up my first location in Arlington, in Jacksonville. And before I got it going, since I started working for the hospitals, I had a lot of detractors, a lot of folks saying, man, Dr. Uche, how are you going to compete with the big hospitals? How are you going to compete with corporate America buying up practices? And I told them that, sometimes it just takes one person to do things different. And I went out on a limb and I started building, bought the building, bought the land, got the show on the road, and here we are today.
So I love that. So you had a lot of detractors. You said people that were saying that it's too risky.
Correct.
What internal spark of you just said, I'm going to push through? Was it, I love what you talked about, how you said how people would come back and say, can I see you again, doctor? I want to see you from the first treatment. And you couldn't do that in the current system you were in. Was that the main impetus for starting this?
Yes, that was one of my main driving forces. I knew that since I was providing care that people liked, and people will travel to a good doctor, they're really not going to the name on the building or whether it's a big facility. They're actually going to see that physician. So it's because I knew I was giving them that care which they wanted. I knew that at the end of the day, my dad always told me that the cream rises to the top. So if you're at the top of what you're doing, people are going to come and find you. And that's how I started going.
Well, you're very humble because you've grown an amazing empire down there. Your reputation precedes you.
Thank you.
Talk about some of the challenges. It's of course it's all, your attitude is great. When we talked before, your energy, it was just infectious.
Right.
No pun intended in the space that you're in, of course.
Thank you.
But, talk about some of the challenges, because people may see you today and say, look how successful he is. He just opened a practice and it grew easily.
Right.
That's not the case, is it?
Right. No, that's not the case. The challenge is, adversity is, part of life. And really what determines how high you're going to climb is how you deal with it, how you get through those challenging times. And most of the time you're either made of two things. You're either made of coal, whereby when you're under pressure, you're going to crumble, or you're made of diamonds, whereby you just get stronger and become a precious metal. So my dad had always told me, you have to be a diamond. And the challenges started, like I said, when I started out with St. Vincent's. I got into a challenge with them regarding privileges, so I left the clinic. I left the hospital setting. But I got into a battle with them, and the battle was because I thought I needed them to be who I was. So I really wasn't following my dad's instructions that you're actually made of a diamond. So because I thought I needed them, I was ingrained in this long battle with them. But eventually we went our separate ways. So when we went our separate ways, that's when I had my back against the wall. And it was through that adversity that made me know that, you know what, you have to do this now because this is no longer an option. So it was that adversity that I went through, or the trial that I went through at St. Vincent's, that I actually turned into a testimony when I opened the practice. So it was that grind that my dad told me, you're either made of two things. You're either made of coal or you're made of diamond. And you have to prove to the world which one you are.
So, I love that. It's a true entrepreneur. I know you're a
Right.
doctor, and I won't
Right.
take away the MD from you, but you're
No
such
problem.
an entrepreneur, because I've always said it's the adversity where you learn things, right?
Correct.
You're not learning things in success. You're learning things during those challenging times. And without those times, it doesn't make you who you are.
Correct.
So talk about being not just a medical doctor, but an entrepreneur. How do you juxtapose those two?
Yeah. So again, the good book says man shall not live by bread alone. So you can't just have one stream of income. You have to, eat bread, eat greens, eat your vegetables. So you have to have a number of avenues. And my dad was like that. He was a lawyer, but he was always into real estate. He was into investing, and he also wore a bow tie. He actually wore a tie, so I just picked up from that. So it's because of his talents that I realized that, you know what? Yes, you may have the talents for medicine, but then in the field of medicine I was in, I realized there was another area, which was cosmetic surgery, where people wanted not necessarily immediate gratifications. They wanted to actually look better, not necessarily just feel better. And that was how I then founded another stream of business called Timeless Medical Spa. So that's where I do most of my cosmetics, facial injections, Botox, body contouring, liposuction. And when I was actually going to start that out again, the detractors were saying, Doctor, how are you going to do this?
And what year did this happen?
This actually happened in 2012/13.
So it was a need by people looking for those services.
Looking for those services. And obviously seeing when people came into my practice, they would ask me for referrals to those. So I'm like, okay, well, the doctors who are doing that don't have two heads. They're not a two-headed eagle. I can go and learn these skills myself. So I went out for training courses, trained myself in these practices, and then became proficient in that. And that helped me move Jacksonville, Timeless Medical Spa to where it is now. So we help people feel better with their health, diabetes, hypertension, and everything else. But we also help them look better by modifying and helping them contour their body shapes and sizes. Because it's all about feeling good. When you look in the mirror and you see what you like, the tendency is you're going to do better because you feel better about yourself. And when you feel better about yourself, your productivity improves. So a lot of people say, well, you don't have to do that. You have to stick with the way you look. But it's more than that. They've actually done studies to find out that when people feel better about themselves, when they look at themselves in the mirror, they actually produce better. So that was for helping them achieve the best version of themselves possible.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it's that state of endorphin release, right?
Correct.
When if you look good from the outside, you're going to feel good, and if you feel good from the inside, it's going to produce the endorphins and the chemicals necessary to continue to look good.
Because you see something, you like it, and you want to carry on.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're in the business of making people not only feel better, but look better and be the best versions of themselves.
So talk about the cosmetic space, because there's a lot of misperceptions about the cosmetic space.
Right.
Can you tell our audience about the things that they might have had a misperception of that you can clarify?
Right. A lot of people, when they hear cosmetic surgery, they think back to the old times, whereby if you wanted to have a facelift, you had to have scars and cuts all over, and people were kind of moving away from that. It was seen as very aggressive, safety measures, and people really didn't want to go under anesthesia. But times have moved on from that. So starting with the face, for example, I just going headwise. You can modify your face by so many other methods as opposed to necessarily going under the knife. Prior to that, like I said, prior to now where we are now, you had to go under the knife. But now with technology, there are ways you can actually heat the skin. That causes collagen and elastin formation that helps tighten the skin. And I just kind of summarize that briefly in today's terms as to what the lasers do. So you can tighten up the skin using heat and laser therapy. You can tighten up the skin using threading, whereby you can go between the subcutaneous tissue and actually pull back. So you can actually modify people's jawline using threading. You can actually do microcandle liposuction of the face now. So you can achieve those same results with less aggressiveness and less invasion of the actual skin itself. And a lot of people are moving towards that. So the misconceptions were prior issues people had with thinking it was very aggressive, but now you can achieve those subtle changes with very, very minor intervention, and sometimes external.
So, regarding your patients, from what you said from the beginning and what your reputation says about you, your patients love you. That's kind of why you started your first practice, why
Correct.
you've now opened this practice, and talking about those misconceptions, of course, and talking about technology. Talk to me about some particular cases or those success stories that you've had. It isn't just about fixing one thing, but it's just, I'm sure your patients are lifelong friends now.
Correct. Yeah. My first actual patient that I am, because I specialize in the area of body contouring, liposuction, was a patient, a Latin patient who came in, who couldn't really speak a lot of English. So she came in with her husband, and her husband wanted her to be the best thing for him. And so she had a bit of a enlarged abdomen. So we, long story short, we used what we call tumescent liposuction on her, whereby you don't necessarily have to put the patient to sleep. It's called light sedation. So he was happy about that. He didn't want her to go under general anesthesia, which is one of the other kind of complications that can happen with general body contouring or plastic surgery, whereby the patient is put under. But in this particular case, it's light sedation, so we don't have to put the patient under. They're just under light sedation when we use a slight dose of a benzodiazepine like midazolam or diazepam. That puts them into a slight kind of drowsy state. Sometimes we use nitrous oxide. So the patient is not all the way in deep anesthesia. So he was happy with that. And then we used the microcannula to gently suck out the fat, and then the laser to tighten up the skin. So we did what was called a lipo 360 around her. And at some point I'll share with you the images. And she had a good result. Now, she's felt the best version of herself possible because she's called us up multiple times and is very happy. And she feels happier within herself because she, as a woman, women always want to be the best version for their husbands that they can. So he was happy that he was able to provide that for her. And just seeing her mentally come in, I can tell that she's in a better space, right? So that was one of my first cases.
You're affecting people medically, you're affecting people physically, and it sounds like you're affecting them emotionally as well.
Emotionally as well. And then I also try to get appeal to their spiritual side, depending on what they envision their God to be, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Christian, whether it's Buddhism. At the end of the day, those who do believe there's a higher energy out there, they can call it what they want. So I try to tap into that and let them know that there are greater forces out there. And then sometimes they ask me, how do you know that, sir? And I tell them, well, when you jump up, you land up back on earth. And they say, yeah. They say, well, there's a force called gravity that's doing that. You can't see it, but it's affecting you. So I let them know that there are forces out there, depending on whether you want to believe them or not, that affect you, even though you can't see them. So the same way that gravity brings you down and you can't see it, then those are the external forces. So I try to put them in a positive frame of mind so that they can tap into that and energize themselves and generally feel better. If you're Christian, I might give you a bracelet with a verse on it. If you're Muslim, I might just tell you to keep on doing what you do best. Muslims pray 5 times a day, and that's okay. I know there's a lot of strife in the world, but at the end of the day, all roads lead to Rome. Everybody just trying to battle to get through to a different life. So that's what I try to do as well.
Wow, so you're just decreasing the amount of friction for people battling through that, which is wonderful.
Correct.
We talked about, and I know as our time flies by so fast, you and I talked a lot about that positive energy that you bring, that good perspective. How much has that affected your patients?
It does, because it's all about the energy. And I try to use an equation when I speak with them. It's the Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, and so you have energy on one side equals mass times the speed of light. So I try to get them to look at that equation and understand it fully. A lot of people don't quite understand that equation. Now you can call the energy on this side, you can call it God, you can call it the spirits, you can call it the good life, and then equals mass. So therefore we know that energy can sometimes alter mass. Just like if you wake up in the morning and think to yourself, I'm going to have a headache. What happens? Towards the end of the day, you might end up having a headache. So I try to tell them to think positive, and eventually they'll manifest positivity in their life rather than thinking negative and then get negative influence. Some people think it's hocus pocus, but at the end of the day, if most times when you look at your life, once you start thinking positive thoughts, even if it may not manifest in the physical, you feel better. And once you feel better, you do better. So at the end of the day, I try to get them to focus on the positive side of life rather focus on the negative. Now you can learn from the negative, and that's okay. The negatives, you can look at it as lessons, but I try to make sure that they still stay connected to the good aspects and the better things that happen as opposed to the negative.
Dr. Uche, so much words of wisdom. Talk about the future of Jacksonville Total Healthcare.
Right, Jacksonville Total Healthcare now, we're located mainly in Jacksonville, Florida.
Sure.
My aim now is to extend that service out to Atlanta, out to Orlando, out to Daytona, so we can export what we're doing in Jacksonville to the outside world. Another stream of business that I didn't mention was a Dr. Green Relief RX. That's medical marijuana. Medical marijuana is $1 billion industry. And I actually got into that industry through my lovely wife, Angela. She actually put that idea in my head.
Did you bring any samples with you today?
No free samples.
Okay, I'm just asking.
You have to get certified. You have to get certified. We'll do it at a discount. So she put the idea in my head, and then I kind of ran with it. And I started off with one practice, but now we have over 6,000 patients.
What?
Dr. Green Relief RX is actually one of the biggest locations in Jacksonville, Florida.
Holy mackerel.
Can't talk about medical marijuana without talking about Dr. Green Relief.
So we are going to see you more here in the Atlanta region.
In Atlanta, you're going to be seeing a lot more.
We are going to be best buddies, hopefully, going forward.
We're just getting
because
started.
I love your energy, and your wife is wonderful. She came out to the studio as well.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Uche, talk about if people want to get in touch with you, they want to learn everything that you do, be a part or be a patient with you, connect with you in some way. What's the best way they would do that?
The best way you can do that is if you put in Dr. Green Relief RX online, I'm going to pop up. If you put in my name, we're going to pop up. Other than that, our phone number where you can contact the medical spa is 904-503-3247, or you can go to the website, type in www.timelessmedspa.org or www.jacksonvilletotalcare.org or drgreenleafrx.org. But if you put in any of those, we'll pop up and get you going.
Dr. Uche, what a treat. My gosh. And you are the pro. You looked right into the camera.
You got to speak to the people.
Oh, I love it. That was my best part of my day so far. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching today and joining. I hope this show was as insightful for you as it was for myself. I hope to see you again next week on another episode of The Roadmap.
Thanks for watching The Roadmap with Lee Heisman.